Football Huddle for August 22nd, just 10 days to the start of the season. For the Army football team, they're going to start at Coastal Carolina on September 2nd. That's the Saturday night of Labor Day weekend. And we were up at Army football practice and scrimmage on Saturday and had a chance to watch the team as they are getting close to being set for their opening game with that scrimmage. Now, with us tonight in the huddle, we have from Pelham, New York, we have Jack McGuirk. How are you, Jack?
How you doing? Good. How are you? Happy to be here.
Good, Jack. Glad to have you on here. And from Florida, we have Richard Miller. How are you, Richard?
Very well, Ken. Ready for Army football season. Can't wait.
That's right. And then from the Beaten Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama, from the class of '87, we have Sam Houston. Colonel, how are you tonight?
I'm great, Ken. I got my tickets for the Coastal Carolina game today. Looking forward to it. It's less than 2 weeks away. Go Army, beat the Chanticleers.
The Chanticleers. We're going to all have to practice saying that 3 times quickly. Yeah, it's going to be a good game down there. And I'll be down there. And Sam, I know you're going to make the trip. And I think Richard is thinking about it. So we could have a good delegation. And Jack will be keeping track from his home press box. But was that Army football practice or scrimmage on Saturday? They had a basically the 1s and 2s played the scout team. So it really was a little hard to see specifics, but I would say the team is starting to come together. I think that's what you got to see in that. We had the 3 quarterbacks playing with Tyler, Cade Ballard, and Jamel Jones in. They all look good. Cade Ballard is running better. I think he's faster. I'd never say he's fast. But the only concern I would say in the scrimmage offensively was that Tyson Reilly got hurt. And he did something to it looked like his left ankle or foot. The big fullback. So we're not sure what his status is. Connor Bishop played. And on defense, who's Andre Carter played. Markel Broughton was there for a while. Darius Richardson. And Quinn Moretsky, the place kicker, got 2 field goals. So I think there were a lot of positives in this. I think the only area that was kind of still a question mark is the inside linebackers. And Coach Munkin said after the game, and Coach Woody before the scrimmage, that they've got some players, but they're not quite sure who's going to play, which maybe is a concern when you're 2 weeks from the start of the season. Sam, what's your thinking about the status of the team as you're 10 days away from the opening game?
Yeah, I can only imagine back to, being in preseason practice and you're 2 weeks out before your first game and you're doing the scrimmages. There's a lot of mistakes that are made because you get rusty on fundamentals. And what that means is you go in and you have a scrimmage and you make little mistakes, but that's the purpose of practice. I watched Monken's press conference following the scrimmage, and he's always I love Monken because he's so blunt and direct, and he says it like he means it. And on one of the moments, he was talking about the B-backs, and he was talking about a procession of B-backs that were poor in ball handling, and in each case he would yank that guy and put in the next guy. And then the next guy was poor in ball handling. So I yanked that guy, and he kept yanking guys until he ran out of guys. And he went back to the very first one and says, "You're back in." And what it means for these young men is that it's teaching them a lesson of the importance of the fundamentals of the game, and ball security is one of Monken's real, that is one of his real sticklers. about this Army team that he set about to improve, and he's done such a fantastic job on the offensive side of the ball. When he took over the program, Army was turning the ball over 3 and 4, maybe 5 times every single game. It was like they could not hold on to the ball. And we always remember the pain of the 2012 Army-Navy game, where going in for what would have been the game-winning touchdown with a minute to go in the game, Army turned the ball over on the 10-yard line on first down, not because of a Navy defensive play, but because of something as simple as a botched handoff. That's where Army was, and Jeff Monken, as coach, is making sure that
I was standing about 30 feet away from that play, Sam.
Yeah.
I was on the sideline.
I got up and walked out in disgust, but as many other people did. But yeah, inside linebacker.
It was a heartbreaking moment for the players. So they had Navy on their heels. They were, Trent Steelman was getting 8-10 yards of play, moving them down the field. And I know Trent to this day wishes he had just run the ball himself.
Well, you know what? On that final drive, not to hijack, our initial conversation, to go back to 2012 and the pain of that game. But on the final drive, the only way Army could lose that game is if Army did something stupid and beat themselves. And that's exactly what happened, because Navy didn't beat that drive. Army beat that drive. You lost on fundamentals. Monken is not going to allow a game to go by where the current edition of Army football loses a game because we lost on fundamentals, that we couldn't hold the ball, that we kept putting the ball on the deck. And that's really important to gaining trust of teamwork and making sure that when we field a team, that we know that it's not going to be the mental mistakes that beat us. If we lose a game, it's because the other team was a better team that day on the field. But when it comes to linebacker, he did talk a lot about the inside linebacker position and the competition that's ongoing. One of the things that really struck me is he was talking about some players who've moved from defensive back to linebacker. And the reason he likes to do that is because they have a range of motion. They can run really fast, so they can cover a lot of ground. And at the same time, you've got people who've been playing inside linebacker like Spencer Jones the entire time who are returning. You look back at the body of work of linebackers under the Monken era, and there's really been some incredible players across the board, whether it be Temp, whether it be Ackerman, whether it be Nautigal, whether it be Christensen, whether it be King or West or Smith or Radigan. All of these people have been the next man up, and they've stepped in and they've made plays, and they've led the defense of the interior of the defense, and they've made a difference. And I'm pretty confident that there's depth enough on the ball team where you're not going to see a significant drop off on play on the inside linebacker core. It just means we're going to have to wait until the season starts to really know who that real next man up is going to be at that position. So I'm looking forward to it. And then the last question mark, well, there's other question marks which we can get to, but the last question mark I'll bring up right now is quarterback. A lot of competition going on at quarterback. And
I don't
originally,
think there's any competition now, Sam.
What's that?
I don't think there's any competition about who's going to trot out on the field for the first play. I think it's going to be Tyree Tyler.
I don't know. We'll see. The quarterback by committee approach, if that's what the team's going to do this year, understand that we do not have a Christian Anderson anymore, who was head and shoulders the best quarterback that was on the team last year. So, once again, on the subject of next man up, Cade Ballard, what we know about Cade now is that at some point back in 2020, Cade got hurt, and we didn't really know that, and it affected his running. And I've heard words to the effect, I've heard you make the comment, I've heard Monken make the comment that he's running like he did when he was a plebe. That's encouraging, because you're also talking about a quarterback who's never lost a starting, he's never lost a game that he started in dating back to high school. So he's a winner, and he's a proven commodity. already for the team. So we'll see. We may see a whole bunch of him. Maybe Tyler will start the season under center. I don't believe that it's going to stay that way the entire season. So again, just like I made the point last week, the role of the quarterback in a triple option offense is not to be the person who carries the ball 60% of the time. It's the player who leads the offense in the huddle, takes them to the line of scrimmage, understands the plays, the entire playbook, is proficient at running the entire playbook, and understands the importance of being able to make your critical reads as the quarterback. And you only keep the ball when the read calls for the ball, or if the play was a design play to the quarterback, and that's it. And if you distribute the playmakers that are coming back on the Army football team this year, and some of the people who have been making a statement in preseason scrimmages, then you're going to see a lot of defensive players being caught out of position with some big gainers. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in less than 2 weeks.
Well, Coach Monken was talking in terms of a 1-2 punch. And that could mean that you put in Cade Ballard on special situations, perhaps passing downs, as they really have done in the past. Or they may put him in for a series like in the second quarter, certainly by the third quarter. I think Coach Monken has learned that you are benefited if you have a quarterback with fresh legs. As you said, Sam, you don't really want the quarterback running the ball 25 times a game.
Yeah,
that's a recipe for having the quarterback get hurt and losing your depth. Bryson Daly was very well spoken of by the coach as someone ready to play. And he may be moving up the depth chart. They feel like he can pass the ball, he can run. And it seems to be, and the coach said, basically talked about him in terms of being ready to play. Now, I don't know if he's going to surprise. I'd be kind of surprised if he got in against Coastal Carolina, but he may be pushing Jamel Jones for the 3 spot in terms of trying to also have a quarterback ready for next year, because you can lose those 3 guys. And Bryson, they got a flock of quarterbacks who are freshmen. I think there were about 5 in the game on Saturday. Player at a really good scrimmage was Alejandro Marshall. He had a touchdown pass, a couple of catches, a couple of good runs. He really was the best offensive player for Army in the scrimmage. Jamel Jones got a couple of nice passes. He got one deep ball to Alejandro Marshall. And, as far as defensive linebackers, Cole Mabry made some tackles, and also Peyton Hampton, a couple of players to watch. And, as far as runners, they had Hayden Reed, Miles Stewart, Graham Murphy made a bunch of plays. And also on defense, Fabrice Boy had a tackle, and Quinn Hammonds had a breakup. Boyne had a sack. And also I was looking for Bo Kite, got a bunch of runs in. Maurice Bellin, I thought Sam looked very good when they gave him the ball. Slot, they seem to have him run the play where he goes from the slot and goes in motion towards the quarterback, and he can either take the ball or keep on going and even go out for a pass, sort of a play action. And he got the ball one play, and he really ran it very nicely. Zion Sims, Mac Domenico, Peyton Hampton, big defensive lineman. Dre Miller wearing 98, and the gold team got a touchdown. Bryson Daly to Liam Fortner. I had it when that got the freshmen all excited that their team made a TD. Oh, actually, that was Jacob Azizi to Patrick Hunter. Patrick Hester, names for the future. But Bryson Daly did have a TD pass to Liam Fortner when they did the red zone drill. They gave each quarterback a series starting at the 10-yard line to show what they could do. So Richard Miller,
Yep.
what have you got for us? I know one of the things I've asked you to do is keep track of the Army players who are trying out for the NFL.
Yeah.
And why don't you run down a couple of players?
Elijah Reilly from the New York Jets is now in his second season. He played 7 games, had recorded 1 sack and 23 solo, 22 assists, and 45 total, and only 1 sack in that game. Cole Christensen from the Los Angeles Chargers in let's see. Oh, in 2020 and 2021, he played 4 games 1 year. In 2020, he played 3 games. He had 2 combines in 2020, 1 in 2021. That's 3. Doesn't record like any sacks or he's a linebacker.
I feel like Cole played a lot of special teams.
6'2", 225, 23 years old.
Wait a second. They have Cole Christensen down at 225. I would have expected
That's from the paper that I have.
Okay, that's a little low.
Oh, absolutely. When I go on ESPN, they have him listed as 230.
230 still sounds low. He's lost some weight in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think there were some nice pictures we put on our page that Cole's family took. They did a trip. I guess they had back-to-back exhibition games at SoFi Stadium. That's quite a place to play. And they had back-to-back exhibition games that they went out there for the week and made a week of it. I think they had a fantastic time, and hopefully Cole makes the team. He seemed to be getting some playing time, so we'll be watching how he does. Sam, have you heard anything about Eric Smith with Jacksonville?
I have not. And I was just thinking about Army players and how preseason is going for them, because I've not been really following NFL preseason so far this year. But it would be a good opportunity to see how some of the young Army players are actually doing with their respective teams, and whether or not looks like they stand a chance to make the roster or the practice squad or whatever. But no, as far as Eric Smith, I don't know. I don't know what his status is. I think Nolan Cockrell was getting a look from the Ravens, I believe. And it would be interesting to see, how he's doing. He kind of reminds me of Randy White. He used to play back in the 70s for the Dallas Cowboys. And that's a compliment, Nolan, if you're watching. So definitely big time. And so I'm rooting for you, big guy. And then, of all the players, there's 2 players right now from the Monken era that have made the big impact so far in the NFL. One of them is Elijah Reilly, and the other one is Brett Toth. So Brett has advanced from being practice squad to being, I believe, either a starter or a number 2 for the Eagles at tackle. And there's 2 positions in the NFL that are big time hot commodities, and you keep an eye on them. One of them is offensive tackle, and the other one is defensive back. And if you can excel at either one of those positions, you're going to have a good career with lucrative contracts in the NFL. Take a look at Alejandro Villanuev. The guy figured out what position it was he needed to play, prepared himself accordingly, became an all-pro, and just retired recently.
This year, yeah.
Yeah. Brett Toth has a potential to be the next Alejandro Villanueva. And Elijah Reilly has really been developing as a very good up-and-coming defensive back. What we used to see when he was roaming the defensive backfield with Army playing cornerback. He was the man coverage guy. He was the press coverage dude who would take out the top receiver for each of the teams, and he did a great job of it. Well, he had a lot of learning to do when he got to the NFL, and he was around much superior athletes, as all college athletes find out when they get to the pros. But, if you watch Elijah's career, I mean, he really has become someone who I believe is I don't know if he's going to stay with the Jets, but the Jets have him on I think he's either in the nickel package or the dime package, or he might be the starter at this point. So that's really a statement for, how well these players have done. Cole Christensen was originally on the practice squad. He did get called up to play in some games late last season. And John Radigan he was not on the practice squad. He was playing a lot of special teams for Seattle. He's on injured reserve right now, but I know he's locked in with the Seahawks. So I know he's grown some long hair though, so he doesn't look very military anymore.
Yeah, Coach Munkin was commenting on Elijah Reilly needing a haircut.
Well, you know what? If the pros don't work out, they go back to their second lieutenant commission and obligation in the military. So the hair's coming off.
Yeah. And looking at a picture of Brent Toth with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's got a beard, and he's in at 6'6", 304. A little bit bigger than I remember him in Army.
Absolutely. You've got to be a 300-pounder if you're going to be on the offensive line in the NFL. That's it, because you're lined up against 300-pounders on the defensive side.
Well, boy, we will never forget the block he made in the Armed Forces Bowl against San Diego State on the 2-point conversion. I
was just watching that highlight earlier today.
And he just took it. I couldn't go to the game. I was watching the post from watching the game from our American Legion post. And it's what was it? The game was Army was behind one.
It's 35-34.
And they go for the 2-point. And I tell everybody in the bar that they're going to run right behind Brett Toth. And they sure did. And he just cleared out that side of the line. And I forget who the runner was, but he had an easy run in for a touchdown.
Of course, I was at the game. San Diego State did Army a big favor by calling timeout twice because they kept wanting to see what Army's lineup was. But what they didn't realize was that Army was coming to the line of scrimmage. San Diego State would call timeout. And Army's offensive coordinator, Brent Davis, is up there seeing the alignment of what San Diego State kept lining up in defense. And so, it made the call pretty easy. So essentially you had all you had to get was hat on hat and depend on Kel Walker's speed around the edge.
Yeah,
on the
Kel Walker around that one.
We knew in the stands, we knew the second Kel went in motion that it was a jet toss right and it was going to go, because we could see, I'm standing there with a bunch of former 150s guys, and we could see what the defensive alignment was, and we knew this is going to score the second he gets the ball. It's a done deal, and it was exciting. It was great.
The first of 3 Armed Forces Bowl victories for Army in 5 years. That is quite an accomplishment. Actually, 4 years. And Jack McGuirk, we haven't got you going yet. We're going to have you take a look at Navy and Air Force throughout the season. Keep up. Do you have any observations on how those two teams are doing?
Well, I'll start with Air Force. They have 11 starters back, 6 on offense, 5 defense. Jace Waters and Wyatt Wilson, outside linebacker, Jace Waters, Wyatt Wilson's a wide receiver, the only starters on the offense, and defense 2 deep, who have never started a game. Waters is listed as an outside linebacker where Camby Goff played last year. Goff is now listed as a safety, replacing Corvin Taylor. That's interesting. Camby Goff going from outside linebacker to safety. And Wyatt Wilson is listed as a starter ahead of David Cormier at the split receiver spot. Zach Larrier is the number 2 quarterback behind the 2-year returning starter, Zeke Daniels. We saw Zeke Daniels last year. Also, Jensen Jones is a quarterback, which is one of the 3 positions where Air Force includes 3 players. But Zach Leria, by the way, he's a speedy guy that you're going to might utilize his speed. He actually had multiple Mountain West titles in the 200-yard dash, so we might see him run a lot this season. No sophomores are on offense or defense. Another name to keep an eye on the defense is Christopher Herrera. Big guy, 6'5", 265 pounds, and he had 16 stops and 3 tackles in the last 4 games of the season last year. Air Force had a 4-game winning streak there.
What is his name?
Christopher Herrera is a defensive end. But yeah, big guy, 6'5", 265 pounds, returning starter from last year as a senior. And interesting note, I saw the Vegas odds. They're actually picking Air Force to finish second in the Mountain West Division behind Boise State. So looks like some people have some high expectations for Air Force this year.
Who else is in that conference, Jack?
Mountain West, you also have, I think, Colorado State. You have Wyoming, San Diego State. I think it's San Jose State in that one too.
Yeah, I think so. San Diego State should be pretty good.
Yeah.
They opened up their new stadium this year.
Mm-hmm.
And and Colorado State, the same thing. They opened a new stadium up a couple of years ago. They're trying to build their program. Sam, what's your thought on conferences like the Mountain West, what their future is when you see all the money that's going to go to the Big Ten and the SEC, that it's going to be harder for conferences that are below the top conferences to generate revenue?
Yeah, well, the Mountain West is a niche conference. I mean, the teams that are in the Mountain West, they're none of them are really teams that compete heavily to expect to crack into the Power 5 conferences at all. And so I think that the Mountain West Conference, that being said, is a pretty secure conference for what it is that they represent and what they do. And what is impressive, though, about Air Force is that they continue to be able to compete in that conference year in, year out, because some of those teams, they are pretty good, like San Diego State. As we know, San Diego State has had a pretty good record over the years against academy football, with the exception of the Armed Forces Bowl when Army played them. But I think going into that game, San Diego State was undefeated against Army. And then some of the other teams that it's kind of like a roller coaster. One season they're pretty good. The next season, after they had graduation and attrition, the transfer portal helps a little bit with that. But people don't typically, seek to transfer portal to teams like San Jose State. They want to go to, Alabama and places like that. But I to answer your question, I really think the Mountain West is pretty secure. It's the American Athletic Conference that Navy's in that has seen some major attrition because of some programs that have been really good and have risen to the top of the highest echelons of college competition, such as Cincinnati. And they realized that they could compete at a higher level, and therefore they competed and were accepted to go to other conferences. So the question, I think when you're talking about what's in flux and how is a conference affected, I think the American Athletic Conference is the conference that is more likely to be looking for fresh blood to come join their ranks over the Mountain West. So I think the most changes you're going to see in the coming seasons is going to be in the American Athletic and not the Mountain West.
Well, it all depends on what the remaining Pac-12 teams do. There had been talk of Colorado and the Utah schools, Utah and Utah State, going to the Big 12, and not really leaving anywhere for California and Stanford to go. Oregon sitting up there wondering what they're going to do. thinking they're as big a program as USC or certainly UCLA. And would they end up being invited to the Big Ten with Washington? And so the Pac-12 to survive might poach, some of those Mountain West teams that you and Jack were just mentioning, especially San Diego State, Boise State, Colorado State. So real chaos in college football. That's going to happen over the next 2 years on where schools are going to go. And it puts a big strain on all the other teams. Like my favorite thought is, our friend from Army baseball, Jim Foster, just, went from Army to Northwestern. And they lost, Army lost to UCLA in the NCAA tournament last year. So I said, I think Jim Foster, the first move he should make is schedule UCLA for a 3-game series at Wrigley Field, March 28th, 29th, and 30th. The year they open that league. Somehow I don't think UCLA is going to go for that, but I'm sure Jim Foster would like the payback opportunity. Okay, Jack, you talked about Air Force, gave a good report. What do you got on our friends in Annapolis?
Well, Navy, I saw an interesting story from our friend Bill Wagner with the Capital Gazette. He actually, I think we had him on the radio show at some
Yeah,
point.
he's called a few times. Good guy.
Interesting story about the Navy defense. This year, they don't have Diego Fago or a marquee defender, Michael Mcmorris, who was a 4-year starter cornerback. Mcmorris actually earned an invitation to the rookie free agent minicamp with a team not too far from Annapolis, the Washington Commanders. So we'll keep an eye on him.
Is that so? That's where Diego Fago went? It was the Commanders? Close by?
Yeah. Mcmorris, yeah. Yeah, it was Michael Mcmorris. You got the invitation to the free agent minicamp with the Commanders, so keep an eye on him.
Where did Fago end up?
Fago, not sure.
Check on him. I don't think he was.
Yeah.
Was he a draft choice, Sam?
No, I think he was with the Ravens.
Okay, I think that's right. I think I heard that too. Okay, I'll have to check on that. It's another one, Richard, for your keep track of list. Diego Fago, former Navy, outstanding Navy linebacker.
Yeah, but anyway, Wag was talking with.
Well, he was signed by the Ravens back in May.
Yeah, he was undrafted.
But Bill
One
Wagner was
number
talking with.
54 for Army.
Oh, okay. But Bill Wagner was talking with John Marshall, who's a captain on the Navy football team. And Marshall said he said, we're kind of a no-name defense, but that doesn't mean we're going to play like a no-name defense. I think by the end of the season, we'll have a name. And defensive coordinator Brian Newberry agreed with that, saying there's several defenders who could make a name for themselves before all is said and done. So this is a Navy defense who not too many names on it. Maybe that's something Army could take advantage of, or maybe the defense could surprise all of us and have a strong year.
Well, I think one of the things we saw was Ty Levitine play an outstanding game against Army last December. And so I think they have their quarterback for the season. Is there any reason to think Ty Levitine is not their established quarterback?
Now it looks like he would be the quarterback, and Xavier Arline backing him up.
Okay. Well, I think they've got an advantage. They've got a number one quarterback who's a young player, junior, got a lot of experience in last year, and could be what they're building around. And it certainly was impressive against Army last year. Very poised in that situation. After the scrimmage, we talked to Tyler Tyler, and then afterwards, I asked him, he mentioned one thing, because we sort of got this discussion going in a couple of interviews last week about what causes a bad practice. And what do they do? And I read into that. Those are days when they've had a lot of responsibilities, things they had to do for school or for the Corps. And Tyre was talking a little bit about that. He's a regimental officer. And he said he's got, what does that mean? He's got 4 companies under him, Sam?
It depends on what, is he a cadet battalion commander? In that case, he would have 3 companies. If he's a regimental commander, he would have, A through I company. So
Yeah.
that would be what,
I
9?
think it was the first, because he said it was around 300 cadets or so, or
He's
400.
probably, he's probably a
Specializing in
battalion.
ground combat tactics and weaponry and fieldcraft.
Well, they have specific organizations at West Point. And Tyler said one of the things he has to do is go back and check who, missed classes and, is all the scheduling things. What do you call that role, Sam?
Well, I mean, in his role, I mean, obviously he probably has to provide daily reports through the cadet chain of command for, both favorable and disciplinary actions. So, one of those would be obviously the class attendance roster, because at West Point, you don't miss classes, you don't show up late, unlike other colleges where, attendance at class can be almost considered optional. At West Point, if you skip class, you're going to be punished for it. And if you're late for class, you're going to be punished for it. And this is reported daily. So it would be part of his command responsibilities if he's a cadet battalion commander.
What happens if you're just, you have a long walk from one class to the other class gets out a little late, you have to talk to the professor?
Doesn't matter. You're late, and you will go up on the quill roster, which means you're going to get demerits, or if you're a repeat offender for being late, you may get area tours. So
Area tours means walking that courtyard for some number of hours.
Unless you're a core squad athlete in season, and then you have room tours. So you sit in your room, you go to the inspection, and then you go sit in your room. But the difference with room tours and area tours is that an area tour, if you have, say for instance, if you have 10 area tours punishment, 10 hours of area tour punishments, then you walk the area for 10 hours and you could knock out, I think it's maybe 6 hours in a weekend, 1 on Friday, 3 on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. And I'm talking old school, so I don't know how they do it now. That's the way it used to be. The area tour, if you were a core squad athlete in season and you got room tours instead of area tours, it meant that the room tours were spent at a 1 hour walked on the area equals 3 hours that you sat in your room. So it takes you infinitely longer to serve your punishment by being confined to your room for many weekends, serving these room tours.
Doesn't sound like fun. If you're late for class, what's like the first level demerit? What would it get you as far as walking tour?
Well, again, I'm talking old school core. So, if you hear an old grad say 8 and 4, that was kind of like an entry level area tours punishment. 8 and 4 meant 8 demerits and 4 hours on the area. So, usually if you were late for class, you probably get demerits initially, but if you repeat as a late for class, you get an 8 and 4, and it would accelerate from there. If you skipped class altogether, and you had no valid excuse for not being in class, i.e. a valid formal written reason why you could not be at class, like say for instance you were on a travel for athletics or something like that, which would be a valid reason for skipping class, then you may find yourself facing something a little more stiff than an 8 and 4, maybe like a 15 and 10 which is 15 demerits, 10 hours on the area, or a 25 and 20, 25 demerits to 20 hours on the area.
It's a little bit of motivation. Jack, do you have anything else for us on how Navy and Air Force are looking?
No, that's about it. Yeah, Vegas high expectations for Air Force this season. We'll keep an eye on them.
Okay, I'm sure they have high expectations for themselves. They have a lot of confidence in that program.
Right.
So next week we'll talk about their opponents. What are do you have down what their opening week opponents are, Jack?
Yeah, I had it here. Their opponents starting off, it's actually their first one. It didn't look like too big a game. First opponent is Northern Iowa. So
who's that for?
that's Air Force.
Okay.
And then next game after that, they've starting off the season with 2 home games, Northern Iowa and Colorado. And then they go on the road against.
That's a pretty big game. That's Colorado.
Yeah.
It's not Colorado State. That's Colorado. It's a Buffalo.
Colorado. And then they go on the road against Wyoming. And then they're back at home against Nevada.
Okay.
And then October 1st is when they have the Navy game, Air Force Navy game, first of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy games.
Okay. Okay.
And
anything on Navy's? What's Navy's schedule look like?
Navy schedule, on the other hand, they start off with, I think it's Delaware was their first game. Yeah, Delaware on September 3rd. They also starting the season with 2 home games, Delaware and then Memphis. And then they go on the road at Eastern Carolina. They actually have a bye week between the Memphis and East Carolina game. And then the Air Force game. By the way, that Navy Air Force game is out in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Very good. Army's got another scrimmage on this upcoming Saturday. I don't think we'll see many of the veterans playing. I think it's going to again be a chance for some of the younger players who want to show that they can get out on the field. Maybe, a lot of special teams practice. We talked earlier that Brett Morensky made 2 field goals. Coach Munkin was very pleased with his performance. And then, Cole Talley missed 1. I think he hit an upright. So I'm not sure who's going to be doing. I think Brett Morensky maybe. I mean, how did he take the job from Cole Talley? He just won the biggest game for Army in years against Missouri with his 41-yard kick the last time he was out on the field. But Brett Morensky from Hawaii, they may have him doing the kickoffs, trying to get him into the game. And then one of the Army players got off a nice punt. Coach Munkin was pleased with the punting in the game, in the scrimmage. And his number 99 got off an interesting play. And that was Matthew Rhodes from Auburn, Alabama, a sophomore punter. And he dropped the snap and took a couple of steps to his right and then was able to get off a pretty nice kick. And Coach Munkin said, yeah, I mean, he used his head and he said 9 times out of 10, if you run, you're not going to make the first down. So he was very pleased that the player was able to keep his poise and get off a punt on that situation. So I think this Saturday we'll see a lot of special teams and a lot of younger players. I don't think we'll see many veterans in the game. We shall see. They are, as they said, installing their offense and defense for Coastal Carolina. I was thinking, Sam, that watching Andre Carter going against the scout team was really not a fair fight. Andre was, pulling and pushing players out of his way to make a sack at one point. And I wonder how they challenge him in practice, you know, considering he's at a very elite level. And if you go against the scout team, you're playing against freshmen and sophomores, mostly younger players. How do you work that when you have a really elite player to provide competition in practice?
You can never simulate game time expectations through the scout team. You can just try your best to simulate it. And so where Andre Carter is concerned, the interesting X factor of this coming season is that last season, Andre Carter, unless you were an Army fan, you really didn't know who Andre Carter was when the season started. By the end of the Georgia State game, people started to know who Andre Carter was. And by the end of the season, everybody knew who he was. Well, guess what? Everyone still knows who he is. So where he was unknown quantity last year, this year, every single team on their offense has a specific blocking scheme in place to take Andre Carter out of the play for every play. And therefore, when you talk about the scout team, all you can do is speculate what the other team is going to do. And the only way you can speculate what the other team, your upcoming opponent, is going to do is to look at previous games where they were facing a player of similar talent to Andre Carter at the same position, and take a look at what type of blocking schemes and patterns that they put into place to try to nullify that threat from the defense. And you can reasonably expect that they're going to do something similar. But where the scout team is concerned, you're not going to be able to match athlete for athlete and execution to execution because you're simulating. So what Andre Carter is going to see come game time every game is going to be ratcheted up several times what it was that he got in practice. So the only thing that you can hope that the practice squad can do is to create enough of a simulated environment to prepare players like Andre Carter mentally for how they're going to execute their position as part of the defensive unit every single play on that upcoming Saturday. So no, you can't give Andre Carter a fair look during the practice sessions at all. It's really not what they're at this point of the season. It's really not what it'll be next week before they really get hardcore into the Coastal Carolina looks. And that's when you're going to see a lot more of the starters out there practicing as a starting unit, going up against the scout team, going up against the scout defense. It's going to be running the Coastal Carolina packages. You know, the scout defense is going to be running against the scout team that's going to be trying to simulate, what the run pass option type offense that the Chanticleers run, and good luck with that, because it's not that these are not schemes that Army runs inherently. So it's really up to the coaching staff to prepare the scout team, which is just as important as getting the starters prepared for the game. Because if the scout team does not give the offense and defense a fair look to get ready for the Saturday, then the team is not going to be ready come game time at all, because they're going to start seeing things that they were not prepared for and they didn't see during the week.
Okay.
So plus there's going to be a lot of game film. So, where Andre Carter is concerned, I guarantee you the young man is going to be studying a lot of game film in addition to his reps on the field.
That's what I talked to Markel Broughton about, is where do you get the time to watch film at West Point? Considering the academics, considering he's a regimental commander. I think he's a first regiment sergeant major. And I had a picture of him out on the Academy's social media page today.
Nice.
Find time. And he said, because they all carry around a laptop that the athletic department sends the material on. And so he said if he's got a break between classes, he'll watch the video on his laptop for a few minutes and make sure he's not late for class.
Mm.
Well, I know that once you start getting into the season, every practice, there's going to be dedicated time for breaking down game film, not just breaking down game film with previous games, take a look at things you did well and things that you need to improve on, but looking at the, individual position coaches are going to be taking a look at getting their players ready for the other team by looking at game film of them and the execution that they did on the field to get them, visually in the mindset of what to expect. So,
Okay.
but you're right. For a service academy player, it's mind-boggling how tight your schedule is from, wake up at 5 a.m. till the time that you go to bed, if you go to bed at TAPS, which is unusual for cadets because you've always got something academically the next day that you stay up late studying for, or a project you're working on, or a paper or whatever. So sleep is a premium. When do they find time to work sleep into their day? Anytime they can lay down for 15 minutes, they're going to do it. So
Yeah, we've seen pictures of the players taking naps in their cubicle in the locker room.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. These players are exhausted. So that's a testament to how disciplined and how athletic these players really are, because you don't know unless you're familiar with the inner workings of West Point and a cadet's daily life. You are completely out of touch with understanding that these players, they have infinitely more responsibilities on their plate than most adults will see in their entire life, just packed into one day. And that's before they even get to practice. So
Okay.
hats off to them.
Okay. And so anyway, that will wrap it up for tonight. And we'll be back. I think we're going to do a Tuesday next week as we get set to for the opener. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. And so, Jack, you can take a look at the opponent next week too.
Mhm.
And Richard will take a look at the opening week. Actually, there's a couple of games this weekend. Some early ones. So Richard, you can do look at that. Hey, well, we'll break. And so I want to thank our team, Jack McGuirk calling in from Pelham, and Richard Miller calling in from West Palm, Florida.
Thank you.
And Sam Houston from the Beat Navy studio in Huntsville, Alabama. So I just want to remind, we have an outing next week. We have information on our website, Jim Valvano Memorial outing with for the Jimmy V Fund, the V Fund for Cancer Research. That's going to be at a place called Englebrook, a beautiful club in northern Westchester, next Monday. And it's going to honor one of our guests from last year, Herman Bowles, for a West Point graduate, dedicated member of the Association of Graduates, and a very successful colonel in the Army, but also a very successful real estate executive based in the Washington, D.C. area. So if you have some information, if you can come out, that would be great. Also, if you want to buy a whole sponsorship, there are a few left. So anyway, we will say goodnight, and we'll see you next week, and looking forward to the opening of the 2022 Army football season. It's going to be fun. Thanks for watching.